Hey guys, welcome to the Engine25 Reviews YouTube channel. Appreciate you watching. Today we're talking about the new movie in one of my favorite franchises, The Matrix Resurrections. Before we get there, of course, if you like this video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, let me know what you thought of the movie, maybe your favorite quote. My dog's scratching the door, but we're going to go with it. On that note, I'm going to introduce the panel. Today we have a big crew of some folks that I went to college with. Katy has been on the show several times. How you doing today, Katy?
I'm good. I'm really chill because it's -6 degrees out. Living my
Nice. We're
best life today.
we're down south. It's supposed to get real cold tonight, but it's not going to be that cold.
Yeah.
Also, my buddy Adam, who's been on the show a couple of times. What's going on, Adam?
Hello.
All right, that's all we
So
get.
that's my best
And then
Morpheus impersonation.
the analyst himself, Roger Allen. What's up, bro?
Nothing much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Always happy to have friends on the show. Before we talk about The Matrix, I do have a very important question. Have any of you watched Peacemaker on HBO Max?
I have not.
Well, you should, because it's amazing. Um, it has a hilarious and very tone appropriate intro song. It's like a dance number to alongside a Norwegian hair metal song. And it's just utmost of ridiculous. No, yeah, that's exactly the face you should make based on that description. But it totally works. It's incredible. Anyway,
Sounds like a setup on Parks and Rec.
it's
You know what I mean?
you're not wrong. That's a fair point. Anywho, what the real reason why we're here is to talk about The Matrix Resurrections. And I cursory thoughts at first. We'll get into spoilers a little bit later on, but let's. I'm gonna go to Roger first because he's the biggest Matrix fan that I know. And
Okay.
What's your experience with The Matrix going into this, and then kind of give me some general thoughts on the Matrix Resurrections.
Well, I have a copy of the Matrix Blu-ray somewhere in the house. I watch them pretty frequently. And
Define frequently, because I used to watch them pretty often, but then I haven't. It's probably been 5 or 6 years. I watched them leading into Resurrections, but in doing so, realized that it's been quite a while since I've seen the first trilogy.
Right. I think the last time I'd seen them before watching them before Resurrections was maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. So like once every 2 or 3 years. Not I don't watch them every year. It's not like a ritual, but and then of course like just clips will float onto my YouTube sort of stream of consciousness where I'm watching videos doing something else. So like not super frequently, but I enjoy The Matrix. I'm a big fan of the Wachowski siblings in general, and
What do you think is their best non-Matrix movie? You're looking it up right now, aren't you?
I am, because I don't remember the exact name.
I'm a big fan of V for Vendetta, and I think Adam likes that one too. But they didn't direct that one. The best movie they've directed is outside of the Matrix is probably Speed Racer, which may or may not be an embarrassing fact.
I'd say Cloud Atlas is better than that.
Really? See, I don't even think Speed Racer's good. I think there's a super solid like 90-minute kids movie somewhere in that 2.5-hour mess. But that's another conversation.
Yeah.
So what did you?
I might be one of the.
Hello.
Yeah, Adam, go.
Oh, sorry. I like V for Vendetta a lot, but I've got to jump on the Cloud Atlas bandwagon, even though that movie will chew up your soul and spit it out if you're in the mindset when you watch it.
That's probably why I haven't seen it.
The Matrix will chew up your brain, so that's another That's another point. What'd you think of the Matrix Resurrections, Roger? Generally at first.
Generally, I liked it. I thought it had a good mix of the kind of like action sequences that we're used to in the Matrix. You know, the Matrix franchise being in a way kind of a love letter to kung fu movies, and it's also got a lot of the philosophy that was in the original Matrix, although it's been updated for the past 20 years of internet culture. So I enjoyed it.
What, Adam? You and I have been talking about the Matrix since like middle school, probably. Like
Since we met, because we met right around the time that
Reloaded and Revolutions came out. Yeah, because I have never seen one of these movies in the theater. Even now, I had planned to see the Matrix Resurrections, and then Omicron happened. But you know, I watched. My older brother rented, or actually probably watched it on cable. The first Matrix movie, and then when Reloaded and Revolutions came out, we rented them on Blu-ray. But I remember like you had gone to see Reloaded and Revolutions in the theater, and I was super jealous.
Yeah. Revolutions is the only one I saw in theaters, and I still stand by that the Battle of Zion is one of the best battles in cinema history. Personal opinion.
That's fair. It is. I would say it's a little confusing geographically, but it's also not that complicated. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's because the city of Zion is very confusing geographically.
That's true. All right, Katy, you have the least. Yes. Well, it's just tell me your history with the Matrix, and then tell me what you thought of Resurrections.
So I think mid-December, I saw The Matrix for the first time in anticipation of being yelled at because I hadn't seen it. And I didn't like it at all.
Can you tell me why?
I just couldn't get into it. And I think later on when I talk about what analogies I use to understand Resurrections, I can go a little more into that. But I just had a hard time like getting myself into that world of like, what is it, like 2004, 2007?
The first Matrix was 1999.
Oh, there you go. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I could not get my head around that at all.
And
I was 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say like Katy was a baby child compared to the rest of us.
Yeah. So I just had a really hard time getting into it. I mean, I appreciated the cinematography, obviously, and
the Matrix changed like of all the things the Matrix did, but it changed the way movies are made. And when I say the way movies are made, I mean like the nuts and bolts, hands on the ground. Like it did things that had never been done before, and now it makes you look back on it, it makes total sense. Like the circle shot, where like Trinity, 5 minutes into the movie, Trinity jumps up in the air, the camera spins all around her, and she kicks somebody in the face. That would be a special effect these days. And at the time, that was done practically with still cameras. For folks at home, you predetermine exactly how long you want that move to last, and let's just say it's 30 frames long. So then you position 30 still cameras around Trinity, and you click them all at the same time, and then you have a circle. And I'm sorry, I totally interrupted you, but yeah, like just to say that the Matrix changed cinematography like forever.
Yeah. And it's evident in like every single aspect of that movie. And knowing some of that history, I definitely appreciate that. Although I did not know that detail, but just looking at it, you can tell that a lot of care went into that film. So I appreciated it. I just didn't quite like it. And I feel like that's fair for somebody who had never seen it
totally
before.
Fair. I'll never judge somebody for not liking something.
Yeah. Especially for a movie that's 20 years old, more than 20 years old. So I was like, but I really admire Keanu Reeves and the legacy of the first movie specifically. So I was like, all right, I'll give Resurrections a try. And I really liked it. Like,
you like it better than the original Matrix?
I don't know if I can say that just because like watching Resurrections gives me so much more of an appreciation for the first one.
Okay.
So I like the first one's definitely growing on me, and listening to you guys while we've been getting set up, I'm like, they're really making a case for these other two movies that I need to watch. But I like coming into this with the outsider perspective because no, don't watch them.
Okay. If you're going to watch them, you have to watch both of them at the same time.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yeah.
is. It's one of those where it's like it's one movie that's cut in half. So it's
Okay.
one big
it's
4-hour thing.
When we were in
Okay.
the theaters,
Give Matrix Reloaded that much credit, Brandon. It is not one movie cut in half. It's one movie cut with like 10% and then 90%, and then they added a bunch of fluff to the 10% to make the middle movie.
See,
Well, maybe I'll have like
Did
something
they-
else to do in between.
I would say it's the other way around. There's a lot more shit you don't need in Revolutions, but
No, my roommate and I in college timed Matrix Reloaded. In a 2.5-hour movie, there are 18 minutes of actual plot development in that movie.
and like 9 of them are just the architect talking.
So I
Superfluous action, and it's pretty cool action, but it's entirely superfluous.
go ahead, Katie.
sometimes we need that. I was just gonna say that. So my experience coming into this movie was definitely different, but I liked it that way because it opened up my mind to a different way of interpreting both movies
Right.
and being able to bring in like my own film background into understanding it. And side note, my dad is a huge tech guy. Like that's what he does. He's been, the IT guy at many universities growing up,
Nice.
So with having such a techie in my family, I was kind of able to understand some of the tech in a different way or make different analogies or just
Right.
kind of like, I don't know. I just had more of a background going in. So I don't know if somebody else who doesn't know film and a little bit of tech like I would have the same approach coming into these two movies. But if you can go on this journey with me, then we'll get there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Go.
Right before we watched Resurrections, my fiance had actually not watched any of the original trilogy either. So we were introducing her to that at the same time. And one of the points that I made was, this is a world before the internet. I mean, it existed, but everybody in the world wasn't on the internet.
The internet was like AOL. It was like an exclusive thing you had to pay to access, basically.
9 out of 10 people, the internet was a 14-day trial disc that they got in the mail.
You had to put a CD in your computer to get to the internet.
Oh my God. This is blowing my mind.
Right. So and I can understand. I hadn't thought about it having grown up with that. But Caitlin, you're right. Catherine, sorry. You're right. It is different if you didn't grow up in that and know a little bit more about that, how different the Matrix might be.
Mm-hmm. And and kids today, they're used to these things. They're the phone that Keanu drops off the building. It's a huge flip phone, and it was like the best, most expensive phone you could get in 1999. Like it was the phone that everybody wanted.
Slider phone.
I'd say that again, Adam. You're breaking up.
Let's say it's cooler than a flip phone. It was a slider phone.
Yeah,
my God, I remember my slider phone.
Hits the slider phone. Everyone in the theater was like, "Holy shit, that is so cool!"
Oh, hey, my dog just busted in. He's okay.
Oh, we love a good dog moment.
I don't know if I can get him. Hold on. Oh, come here. Oh, he's running away.
He knows you have plans.
I just smacked the mic with my head. There we go.
Oh, hi.
And he's also kind of ghosting out.
You look so good. Looks so much like my mom's dog too. I'll have to show you.
Anywho, so yeah, I will I'll follow up here and say that overall, I did like the movie. There's so much in Matrix Resurrections that I really enjoyed. I will say that I don't think it's a good movie. I think it's a big mess, but they got right the things that Brandon needed them to get right to make Brandon happy. I I really like that. Like, it was a very simple kind of story, even compared to like the first Matrix movie. And that it's a story about two people reconnecting. You know, like it's a love story, but it's a love story of people that had, something happened to them, they had a falling out or whatever, and now they're older and they're getting to know each other again. And just the fact that they pulled it back and there's not these big world changing stakes. It's just about Neo and Trinity. I really appreciated, and I think those are the parts of the movie that work the best.
The Matrix Resurrections is a Hallmark movie.
That is a hot take.
It's the most expensive Hallmark movie that's ever been made.
It is kind of like a reconnection, a love story, except it's Neo and Trinity, but it's also like the Wachowski siblings and the franchise having sort of been disenfranchised from one another, and then coming back to it and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. I think that metaphor can work a little bit more inclusively.
That's probably true. I don't. There's some behind the scenes stuff with the Wachowski. Like, Lana Wachowski directed this, and in the past it was both of them. And there are personal reasons why Lily didn't return. And it's kind of interesting. I don't want to talk about their I don't know them, obviously, but they've spoken in interviews, and their parents passed recently, and they both of them have gone through gender transitions, and there are just a lot of, their lives are complicated, and it was kind of the same. Lana came back to direct this movie for a lot of the same reasons that Lily decided not to. And so I encourage anyone who liked the movie to go look into some of that. It's all, they're public figures. A lot of that information is out there. Just be careful where you get it from. But yeah, they're certainly interesting people, and they have the main good thing I will say about the Matrix sequels is that both of them have a lot of very good ideas in them. Some of the execution is arguably stumbles along the way, but they're an examination into reality versus fiction. They're an examination into illusion, and they're an examination into the human psyche and how the machines don't understand humans, and that's an ongoing thing even in the Matrix Resurrections. As the analyst thinks he has it all figured out, and he clearly doesn't. Now I'm holding my tongue before I say anything spoilery. Do we have any other kind of general thoughts before we talk about specifics? Because I'm going to throw a spoiler graphic here in a second. Katy, you look like you're going to talk.
Before we start talking about the characters in this thing, I just want to say that, so for me coming into this, I finally realized, one, that in the first movie, calling in and out of the Matrix is just dial-up. Loved it. Finally clicked with me, because the movie's AI kind of twist, or not twist, but just like the way it operates now. The only way I could really wrap my head around what was happening in this movie was to equate it to the Ryan Reynolds movie Free Guy, where the self-learning AI is like developing, right? And it like does things for itself, with Loki, the TV series, with variants. And so, because of the casting in this movie and how they went about the characters, the only way that I could figure out what was going on was to say, okay, this guy is like Ryan Reynolds, and then this guy is like a variant in the MCU. That's the only way I was able to understand the Matrix Resurrection. So just add those two together, and then you have this movie. Okay. That's how I think about it. I'm so proud of it. I was like, yeah I got this.
Should I
put those two together?
Should I watch Free Guy? I'm a big video game nerd. I have not. I
Watch
have
it.
not seen it. It's probably coming to Disney Plus or Hulu or something pretty soon. Any
Something, yeah.
any other general Adam?
Bouncing off of that, you could probably make a decent case that Loki is kind of just a ripoff, a Marvel ripoff of the Matrix.
Oh my God, I love it.
In what way?
Because you have all these people who live in their own little matrix, which is their alternate universes, and they're all sucked out to help the people who then kind of maintain it. That's where the similarities end. But
Yeah,
you know.
I
yeah.
see that. Yeah.
But it could work.
Okay, so I was having all kinds of issues programming. All right, spoilers. We're clear. The spoiler graphic worked and nothing freaked on me.
Woo.
So yeah, I'll go first. Like I was saying before, the Matrix Resurrections at its core, despite all of the Matrix set dressing, which we'll certainly discuss because there's a lot of interesting ideas there, but like it's a love story about two people reconnecting, and those are the beats in the movie that worked the best for me personally. And I'll say that in spite of the fact that the thing that I think doesn't work the most about the original Matrix movie is that the love story isn't really earned, in my opinion, at least. We find out that Trinity. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's a very 20 years ago love story.
Yeah, it's we find out that Trinity is in love with him, but we don't really know why. So, I feel like I learned a lot more about their relationship together than in this movie than I did in 3 prior Matrix movies.
That was the thing that I was like at watching the first one. I was like, cheap. That's such a lazy.
And the thing is, like, Carrie-Anne Moss is incredible. Like she sells it. It just doesn't, from a story point of view, it's not really earned. Go ahead, Roger.
I have to say, I don't. From having rewatched the first Matrix movie before watching Resurrections, I didn't really think that the chemistry worked between Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss in that first movie, and maybe that's just from the way that Keanu approached Neo in the very first movie. It works in Resurrections. It really does.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I totally agree.
Chemistry.
Yes. Yeah. And maybe they've both had 20 years to hone their craft. So it could be any number of things. It could be the writing, but there's just
also wisdom just comes with age. I think they just know how to play it more realistically.
That's probably true. And I will say up front, Neo is not a character that requires a complex and nuanced performance. And I will also say that has not changed. But there's a lot more going on behind those eyes, certainly in this one than there was 20 years ago. I'm sorry, Adam, go ahead.
I will give props to Keanu Reeves because at the beginning of the movie, while he's still back in the Matrix, his acting is, Keanu Reeves 20 years later, and it's great. But the moment he's back in the real world, he is 100% Neo again.
His name is Neo, and he still knows Kung Fu.
Yeah.
But but like the way that he talked, I was like, wow, your acting just retrograded 20 years.
Yeah. In a good way.
In a good way. It was important. It's a good thing to do. It's kind of like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in the prequel trilogies. He gave us 100% Alec Guinness, which is just a different kind of acting.
Yeah.
So the let's kind of focus in on the first chunk of the movie. Because I think I would say everything that happens before he gets pulled back out into the real world works much better than the stuff that's later. Feel free to disagree at any time. But yes, like there's a lot of really cool ideas here. Like they reframed it so that the first 3 games are basically a video game of which he was the designer. And they're super well known. And of course they're poking fun at reboot culture because that's what everyone is doing right now is they're looking at the thing they made 25 years ago and going back and making more. And that's exactly what the Matrix Resurrections is. So like Warner Brothers, who I was surprised to hear an actual name drop of WB in there, comes to their company and says, we need you to make more Matrix. And I don't know, maybe it's WB has been trying to make another Matrix movie for years, and then Lana decided to step in and do it herself. But they're like, lost my train of thought. They're poking fun at a lot of things, and in the trailers, the things that were worrying me were like when we were seeing flashbacks of the old movie, and a lot of that stuff I think really works. And it's when we find out that Morpheus is now like an agent of the system. I was like, what?
So let me chime in. So I actually watched Resurrections twice. I watched it.
Oh yeah, I've watched it
theaters.
2.5 times since it came out.
And then, but the second time I watched it at home, and I watched it with my mother, who wasn't going to go to the theaters. And for her, she hadn't like rewatched all of the old films with me, so she was watching this having seen the last Matrix movie probably 15 years ago, and the flashbacks really worked for her. As someone who had seen them but so long ago, seeing those little tiny flashbacks really helped her as an audience member like put things together. Like the flashback with Smith looking out the window towards the very beginning, that instantly put her back in the mind of recognizing who that character was, even though we only see the back of Hugo Weaving's head.
Okay, so let's touch. I'm glad you brought up Smith, because Smith is one of my issues here. And I don't necessarily have an issue with what they did with Jonathan Groff, other than they didn't have to call him amazing. Smith. Like, yeah, he could have just been another. He could have been another program, but they connected him to Smith, and he doesn't. Like, he's a different actor, but like he doesn't even behave like Smith. Like and the reason I think that's a problem is because it's a program. Let's like I don't.
Well, I don't necessarily think it is a program. So Smith. At the end of the third movie, it's very clear that Smith as a program is deleted or destroyed, or eradicated once he combines with Neo, and the whole Matrix system, goes black for like a few seconds while it reboots.
Katie looks confused.
That just sounds great.
All right.
Spoilers for that, by the way.
Yeah,
they win.
Quick spoilers for Revolutions is Smith becomes a virus, and he takes over every person and program inside the Matrix. So Neo approaches the machines so that he can go inside the Matrix and eliminate Smith for the machines because they can't control him anymore. And that's all where, right. Yeah. So there's 6 million Smiths at the end of the Matrix Revolution.
He's the rogue agent of the system who's kind of like, decided to just act like the virus that he claims humanity is.
I love that for him.
The first movie, where he compares humanity to a virus. But so Smith is gone, and so I approached this new Smith character with the idea that since they rebuilt Neo, this Smith has to be something that is created from like what's inside Neo, what's in the back of Neo's mind. So this Smith is much more clearly the dark reflection of Neo that Smith was in the first three movies. Here it's much more literally a dark reflection, in that this Smith really can't exist without having come from Neo in some way, because the original Smith is gone.
Or at least his mind, his memories. So in a way, he's like a reflection or a caricature of the original Smith.
Yeah, he's
from Neo's perspective.
Exactly. He's the Smith that Neo believed Smith to be.
Okay.
And so he's created from that whole cloth when the analyst puts Neo back together and uses him as the focal point for this new Matrix.
And so then they just have to give him a face. So why not like skin him as Jonathan Groff? Love it.
Yeah, why not? and we didn't get the song and dance number I was hoping for out of Jonathan Groff, but that's another movie, I suppose.
That's the first thing my mother texted me. She like took a picture, she paused it, took a picture. She didn't know he was going to be in it, and said, "Do you know who that is?" I was like, "Of course." She's like, "It's King George." She loves Hamilton, and I was like, "You had to like stop your movie and text that to me. Like, keep going."
Of course she did.
She had to. It was funny.
Yes, so we get a moment with Christina Ricci, who's in the movie for approximately 45 seconds. And she comes with this new, all right, here's the plan. We're gonna boil it down to buzzwords, and it's like all this modern like bullshit about how social media works, basically. Like she's monitoring SEO or some nonsense like that. But it's triggering things in Neo. It's bringing back memories, and he's slowly remembering himself, even though apparently he's not supposed to be able to do that. According to the analyst, who we'll get to later, or right now. The analyst is played by Neil Patrick Harris, and he's posing as Neo's therapist, and he's trying to keep Neo inside the box. Adam, did you say something?
I said, but he's the one.
He is. He is the one.
He's supposed to remember himself, but he's the one. Also, since we're on to the analyst, the blue everything was fantastic.
Yeah, the glasses, it matched the pill. Yeah.
Even I got that.
It's probably a little on the nose. Oh, my dog busted his way in here, and now he has locked himself inside the room. I'll be back in a sec.
What were you saying, Badger?
No, I was gonna say, yeah, they do a lot of work in this with color coding. Not only are the blue pill and the blue glasses, but also if you go back to where they go to EO, you've got this blue sky, and a lot of time we spend in EO, the new city, is spent reflecting on this idea that they have decided to kind of give up the fight, or at least build a new world instead of actively go into this new matrix and keep pulling people out. And it's a different kind of blue pilling, but the blue color is still there, and it's still that cue that it's serenity and tranquility, but it's also complacency, that these people are that they are where they are, they've achieved what they've got, and they really don't feel like rocking the boat anymore.
It's all about control. People want to be cattle. They don't want to have to think for themselves. Welcome to social media.
Too real.
Well, that's something that I read an article about right before watching the movie, which was with Lana and the two other writers of it. And the Matrix has kind of been a calling card for some, let's call them sideline counterculture movements, without trying to get on one side of the picture or the other. And a lot of that boiled down to the fact that when you had to choose between a red pill and a blue pill, you chose the red pill to break the system and think for yourself. And I think a lot of people hooked onto that, the color coding, a little too hard on that one. And they spent a significant chunk of the first third aggressively breaking that view of what was the point made in the original Matrix.
And I totally agree with that. It's kind of like,
to the point that even Bugs made a point at the beginning and in about 5 seconds rattled off how the world isn't binary. And the only problem with that scene is that she probably talked too fast for those people to understand what she said.
I'm glad you brought up Bugs, because she's probably my favorite new character. And she starts off the movie, they're observing this program loop that's kind of reliving what's they called it, a modal was the word they used.
It's the modal.
It's reenacting scenes that happened in the original Matrix to kind of investigate things, and they like weirdly end up inside Neo's apartment with a program version of Morpheus. But Bugs, what she said, Bugs as in Bunny, and also tech that listens. Anyway, no, I love Jessica Henwick in anything I've seen her in. And she's really interesting here, and I like that she's probably the closest analog to old Morpheus that we have, in that she doesn't listen to what anybody tells her to do. She just she knows what she needs to do and does her own thing. She doesn't believe in the prophecy and all that stuff that the old Morpheus was obsessed about, but she's here to help Neo, because Neo is the one that convinced her that the Matrix was like that things weren't quite right in the Matrix because of this. She sees this flashback of Neo at his Game Award victory party, like jumping off a building. And then it led her, like, Neo flies away. Apparently, it's a, we don't really see it. But it convinces her that something's not right, and then she pledges her life to come back and save Neo once he gets out of the Matrix. I was just I really liked Bugs, and I love that she gave the general some lip, and is just really Bugs serves to point Neo in the right direction, and gives Neo the tools to do so that he can get back to Trinity. And it was just again, boiling the story down to the relationship between Neo and Trinity, and Bugs here is like the facilitator in that regard. What new characters that we did and didn't like? Roger, go.
As far as new characters, I mean, can we count new Smith as a new character?
Absolutely, yeah.
I feel like he's absolutely a new character. Not a great fan of what they did there, but like I do see why I see like the significance of it, of him being like the dark reflection of Neo, and like when he and Neo team up, it's also a symbolism of a Neo accepting, like, occasionally you have to use the darker side, the darker impulses that you have to get things done. You have to form an accord with it. I like New Morpheus a lot.
I like New Morpheus too.
I thought he did a really great job.
Yahya Abdul-Mateen, he's amazing in everything. Go watch all of it.
No, I thought that character worked really well. Not only just for the representational angle, but also the idea of it introduces us early on to the idea that not only can people be unplugged from the Matrix, but also programs that are in the Matrix can be unplugged from the Matrix. They can try to leave.
And they can inhabit machines or the nanobot things, right, in the real world.
So when they talk about the changing meaning of us being that the machines are no longer a monolithic structure. It's not. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
They did a good job in this one bringing that up, because that's touched on in Reloaded and Revolutions. Because you have the family who goes to the Merovingian to save their daughter by putting their daughter in the Matrix. But he's actually in control of the power plants that keep the crop field, the baby pod, up and running. He's not usually in the Matrix. That's why they were in the train program going in and out of the Matrix. So that's a reality that already existed, but this movie did a good job making sure to illustrate that better.
Just feeding off kind of where Roger was going. The machines they're this thing, and they're the enemy, and that's all they'll ever be. Like, and it's not. They touch on something, and it comes from Bugs. After Neo goes to the Machine City, and it's something that no humans witness. They just know that he left, and then somehow the war ended, and he just never came back. But what that led to in the interim between Revolutions and Resurrections is it changed, but the way Bugs puts it is it changed the meaning of our side. So humans are using intelligent machines in ways that they never have before, and programs can leave the Matrix and exist and coexist with humanity in symbiotic ways. And that's something that didn't exist in any of the other movies. They had machines, but they didn't have AI really. They had there's a scene with the councilmen where they go down and they just look at the mechanics of how Zion works and the machines that recycle the water and the air supply, but they don't have artificial intelligence. It's there, when people need to do something inside a computer, it is a person that jacks into a computer the way they do in the Matrix. And now we have machines that exist autonomously in the real world that are allied with humans because of Neo's sacrifice. and that's a really interesting angle that they unfortunately don't explore very much.
Well, it talks a lot about how the movies interact with the idea of hierarchy. The first three movies, that scene you mentioned with the counselor kind of brings up the idea of where in that paradigm of pre Neo sacrifice, the machines were either using people or being used by people.
Exactly.
Ultimately, it was a hierarchical relationship. Somebody was on top, somebody was on bottom, and this new world that they're creating kind of rejects the notion of having that hierarchy, where they don't exist in servitude to either side. And I thought that was interesting. I do wish that they had talked more about it, but I don't know. The movie was pretty long as it is. I don't think they could have fit in even
It's
another 5
long
minutes.
and it already lacks focus. So,
Right.
I would like them to maybe make another movie and talk about some of these things, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. Um, for reasons. But Katie, you haven't talked in a while. How are you? Just to say that there's a lot of philosophical kind of material in all of these movies.
Yeah.
And is there anything that kind of stood out to you in particular in the Resurrections or in comparison to the original?
Well, I thought it was really interesting how they dealt with the idea of uh, prolonged knowledge, or like retaining an essence of self, even in a world or situation where they've been really, I don't know, conditioned in a certain way, which is very evident in like the Neo Trinity storyline, but also with the new characters who I all thought were all really well acted, but didn't all really like work out. Like the new Morpheus was like a little too much for me. Like there was too much with the AI and the modal, and then he's like existing outside of the Matrix. I was like, this is too much in one movie. But I digress. But the way that they handled that character in Smith and Neo and Trinity, and even Bugs, with the idea of you have a sense of self no matter how you're being controlled or what situation you're put in, or you could be totally torn down like Neo and Trinity were, and then
And you
your
can
mind.
still find yourself again after
Yeah,
all of this stuff.
yeah, and like if you think about the way that Trinity and Neo were resurrected, I mean, it's really graphic, and it's really
We saw Neo's brains.
yeah, it's disgusting. But it's also really violating. And so the way that they kind of equate that kind of violation to having some kind of sense of self that's outside of that control of the machines or the matrix or what have you, I thought was really interesting. I thought it was really well done.
I do have to say that I'm glad that they brought back some of the grosser stuff in the Matrix. I mean, like when we see Neo and Trinity in the pods again,
Yeah,
I think the
yeah,
pods are a great visual representation of how the machines don't understand humans. The pods
yeah.
have no aesthetic value. If you look at them as a human being, they gross you out. You're plugged in all over the place. You're sitting in this sort of amniotic fluid, and
That's recycled dead people, by the way.
yeah. Oh, we see. I love when we get a shot of the tube with the macerators, and you can kind of imagine if they had flushed a whole body through the macerator tube, how it would be churned back up. Yeah, it's the gross stuff, and it
I
shows
love
like
gross. It's just gross
the
though.
it shows how the machines like they have a different sense of aesthetic. At least they don't share human aesthetic, and they wouldn't understand what a human person kind of thinks is beautiful unless it's directly inside inside the context of the Matrix, which is a simulation made to please human senses. So I don't know if that really counts.
And that's aesthetics is an interesting point. Yeah, because the machines have a look, like a certain visual kind of design, and I would say it's fairly consistent from the old movies into Resurrections, but it is not one. If I'm picturing something that if I'm picturing a machine that another machine would design, it would be like a form of efficiency or something like that. It is not the machine aesthetic in the Matrix is not that. you know, it's almost spider-like, and they have tentacles and like weird hoses and stuff that seemed, you know, it's. I guess what I'm trying to say, it has a really unique look to the Matrix, but it is not what I would picture machines doing. And that's, you know, when Neo visits the machine city, there are, you know, there's spider machines crawling on the walls and stuff. You know, like there are things about physics that they can ignore because, you know, humans rely on based on gravity to function. When you go into space, your head inflates because your whole system is designed to force your blood against the force of gravity. Machines don't have that kind of restriction. So when Neo visits the machine city, you know, for the machines that don't fly, they're still crawling around on the ceiling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great visual representation of how they take the carcass of the human world and they're inhabiting it, but they don't use it like humans would. They don't need to walk through the corridors. They don't
Exactly.
need to use bathrooms. Like even how the ships go through the human sewers, they're empty because the machines don't use them. Because they literally do not care about the extensive sewer system. Everything that the machines use organically is recycled and reproduced. They don't flush anything down there. And so the sewers are entirely empty because the machines just would not see any function for it.
And there's another note about the aesthetics that I wanted to touch on, and that's that the new human city of Io, the first of all, it's significantly larger than Zion, but there's like everything's built into these like columns. It's a massive void, and there are these columns that are, you know, like they're shaped kind of funky, but the aesthetic of Io is like a really interesting blending, in my opinion at least, of the machine aesthetic versus in addition to like the really like concrete heavy angular designs of what the humans were building in the old trilogy. So that's interesting. Again, we have changed the meaning of our side, and machines are helping us now, and maybe machines help them build Io in a way. Like, also, this thing is huge, and somehow we're meant to believe that it was constructed in 60 years by humans. So maybe they had machine assistants in building this enormous city.
Yeah, I mean, and it's huge, and it's not kind of built in the same layered defense that Zion was. You know, Zion was really close to the Earth's core because that was the only source of heat. I guess they have some different source of heating in Io because it doesn't seem to be that far down, and it's built wide instead of being built deep. Like it is a deep crevice,
right?
Whereas
really Zion was like a big cylinder. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, that you illustrated the point well. Like Zion is the big cylinder, and Io is more like this kind of honeycomb, I guess. It kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like the inside of of some kind of insect burrow.
Colony.
Yeah. Like, yes, like a bee colony or something like that. So coming anything else anyone wants to say about the look? Is I really liked the machines that are helping the humans, like the eagle type, the bird type machine. That Niobe looks terrible. One aesthetic thing that just didn't work is the makeup that they put on Jada Smith is awful.
I heard it took like 5 hours to put that on.
It probably did.
Mm-hmm.
And it's oh god.
I mean, to their credit, I couldn't even tell that it was Jada Pinkett Smith, so maybe that's what they were going for. But
maybe, I mean, and she is supposed to be like 90 years old or something, right? You know, she was an adult in the other movies, and 60 years have passed, to be fair. But no, it's like just
she was an adult, but no one in Zion was very old. I mean, you had the counselors who were pretty up there, and they had people who were born, but the implication from the first three Matrix movies was that the destruction of Zion was something that happened cyclically pretty often.
Yeah,
Not
humans have been basically eradicated 6 times before the first Matrix movie.
Five times.
Because
yeah.
you're right,
this
5
would-
times because that was the 6th iteration of the Matrix, and we're now on to the 7th.
But we also have no context of exactly how often that happened, because the only person who puts a rough date on the series is Morpheus. And if that's true, then we could have started recounting from that presumed date every time that humanity was wiped out.
They do say it lasts, or they've been fighting machines for 100 years, so maybe they think it's 2199, maybe it's more like 2699.
Right. That's my point.
Yeah.
Because it has to go on long enough for there to be a stable population of thousands of humans, which when you're waking up pod babies, that doesn't take that long, I guess, but I don't know. This is about the movie, not about the logistics of,
Well, I think that the way that they went about this, the look of the film in the very beginning was just so immersive in a way that I wasn't expecting. Like, it felt like a Matrix movie, but it felt really new at the same time.
I agree with that. Like it feels like the Matrix, but there are specific things that are like basically like new systems or new graphic technology in a video game. Like Neo has, since the first movie, has had the power where he can hold up his hand and stop bullets. But now it's like they just kind of stopped in place, and now it's like a force field that they bounce off of and spark. Little things like that where it's like the same basic thing exists, but it's a more modern take on it. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but yeah, there's a.
No, you're fine. You actually brought up the point that I wanted to kind of complain about, which was that they just use that bullet shield.
Oh, yeah, no, you're totally
way
right.
too often. It's way too easy.
He's
It was
blocking
used
punches
way
with
too
it.
much. I'm like, don't you have any other tricks? I know you do. You're Keanu Reeves. I know you have something else.
Actually,
It was just that was lazy to me.
Throughout the entire series of The Matrix, we've done this once, now let's do it 5 times until we've done it far and beyond where we should have.
I really enjoyed it when he like deflected the rocket at the other helicopter. That was
dope.
It would have been a lot more dope if I hadn't seen basically the same power 7 other times in the last 15 minutes.
Okay, if we're gonna talk about the fight scenes, can we talk about the train fight?
We can. That's probably my favorite.
I think the train fight is the best fight, like, hands down, because there's so much going on. The fact that now, instead of being sort of transmogrified into agents, people can just sort of be remotely overridden and
that's a super cool idea.
The bots. I think it's a reflection of the new Matrix and the new approach to it, and it's also kind of a reflection on technology that's changed since the first Matrix. Since the first Matrix movie, like, real world technology has changed, and that has changed how they write the fiction for how the Matrix works, if that makes sense.
Is it a metaphor for how our technology controls us?
Well, also, I think it's a literal metaphor when they talk about bot swarms,
right?
Online on social media, you really can't go anywhere without encountering some sort of bot swarm, hordes of accounts that are created by people that don't exist.
Yeah, hordes of faceless people.
Say the same thing and do the same thing and like the same tweets, that kind of faceless bot horde. It's a very clear reference to that real world phenomenon in the new Matrix movie.
And there's the thing about the bots that I have heard some people like hating on the last, like the end chase. I wouldn't say it's very exciting, but I do like the moment where it's just like raining people. They're just overriding civilians and just diving through windows to try to block the street and stuff like that. Like, that really got me. And maybe it's that, I don't know, maybe I'm looking into it too much, but that was like almost kind of upsetting. They have no control and they're just forced to die in order to stop Neo from escaping.
certainly cringy, but also way too easy. I felt like it was the same thing with like the bullet shield. I'm like, we've seen this happen on that train fight, right? And I was like, can't you do anything else than like throw people out of buildings?
I don't know. It felt like a zombie movie.
Yeah,
And
like
I did
kind of
not
like that. Yeah,
I did not go into the Matrix film thinking it was going to end like a Resident Evil film.
that's a fair point. What about we mentioned Merv, good old Merv, and you know he comes in and he starts talking about how Neo ruined everything, and everything is about you're more worried about your cell phone now, and you don't everything's a reboot and all that. Like he just spouts off in about 30 seconds 6,000 things about why the world sucks in 2020 or 2021 or whatever the fuck year it is, but there. Oh God, you know I love the Merovingian, and to see this, and the weird thing is having if you go read about read some other theories and stuff on it, like exiles, exiles meaning like programs that no longer have a purpose or what have you. Like the Matrix has really focused in on eliminating exiles because of what happened with Smith. You know, rogue programs are a danger to the Matrix and to the machine world. So, and that's kind of how that was the Merovingian's whole thing is he controls this network of exiled programs and he gets by just under the radar. But now that the analyst is in charge, they're really cracking down on that. And I think that's a really interesting idea. But the way that Merv is used in this movie is just kind of embarrassing. And the fight surrounding it sucked. And it really made me sad. What do you think, Roger?
The fight was awful.
It was awful.
I didn't like the camera work. You know, one of the neat things about if you go back and you watch the building security checkpoint fight from the first Matrix movie,
right?
You're always clearly following either Neo or Trinity, you know, as they're doing their action, as they're walking on walls and the concrete pillars are being blown up by bullet fire. There's just too much going on in the exile fight. There's like too many people. It's never really focusing on
yeah, and none of them are, you know, they're like faceless goons. You know, they're the only person of any of that matters at all is the Merovingian, and he comes up, says his piece, and then disappears.
And they're not like the cool faceless goons from Reloaded, where they at least had some sort of gimmick where you could tell the goons apart. You know, the goons that could walk through walls, or the albino twins. The new exiles, they show up and they fight and then they all die, maybe.
Yeah, I don't.
It's never really clear what happens to them when they go to the ground and then they don't come back up. Are they dead? Are they just knocked out for a long time? You know, a lot of people get shot in this new Matrix movie.
A lot of people.
There's really not a whole lot of blood.
That's a fair, and there's also not a lot of kung fu. There are a couple of moments where Neo seems like he's going to fight with his fists, and then he just gets his ass kicked repeatedly, which is, I guess, fine. But he just uses that the force shield a few times, and then they try to redo the dojo fight, and then Neo just figures out, I don't have to fight you. I'm just going to blow up the whole building. It's, I don't know, that probably the most disappointing thing for me overall is the fight choreography. And not to say that's at all the only problem this movie has, but what like I said at the top of the show, like what Resurrections gets right and what it does well, it does very well, I think. And that's just unfortunately not one of them, which kind of sucks, because that was the thing that people remember, the thing that average people remember about the first Matrix is the fight scenes and bullet time, which, by the way, I think Lana is kind of salty about. So she makes a big point of making fun of all the people who love bullet time. But
I'm kind of wondering if, I could be totally wrong, but maybe COVID had something to do with how the fights were blocked for this.
Maybe it did. It had to. it had to shut down because of COVID, and
Yeah.
it was early enough in the production that like Lana Wachowski like was seriously considering finishing the movie or not. You know, like it
Mhm.
was,
Yeah.
excuse me, like
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just thinking in the same way, like maybe like using I think of it as Gwen from The Witcher because that's essentially what it is. But like his like bullet shield and anything, like maybe that was also a way to help the production not need as many people on set, maybe. Because I could see like Kiana and Carrie Ann Moss like on that motorcycle in that last fight scene, and she's just like zooming down, and he's Gwenning the whole time. And I'm like, I can see them shooting that on green screen or what have you, and then adding other things in later for him to be blocking. And then
Right.
that way you don't have people.
And that may be true.
Yes.
That's everything was affected by the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we're just now really getting movies back in the theater in the last 3 months.
Mhm.
But
So I had literally just thought of that because I was thinking the same exact things as all of you. And so I'm kind of wondering if and when I watch it again, if I'll be able to see any of that, because I feel like they couldn't not know that their fight scenes weren't up to expectation. Like even I thought, I was like, all right, this is going on too long. I'm kind of
going on too long, I don't think is a problem. Like, Adam was saying how much action is in The Matrix Reloaded, and it's,
I was about to argue that I think that's actually par for the course for the series, because Matrix movies have this bizarre habit, the first one notwithstanding, but you have the first third where you posit a bunch of really cool ideas, and then the second third where you're trying to figure out what you're doing with those ideas and just throw in a bunch of action, and then a really an unexciting conclusion. I won't even call it like anticlimactic because there's not really a climax. It just kind of ends.
What?
That makes sense.
Roger, tell Adam why he's wrong about the ending of the first Matrix movie.
Whoa. I'll referee.
I don't know. I might actually agree on some points that the ending of the first Matrix movie is not great. It depends on like Neo's monologue at the end. I think is pretty good. I think it's honestly
Neo's monologue, and then he flies away.
The ending of the first Matrix movie is great up until the point where Neo gets shot and died, and then stands up.
Well, no, that's the culmination of his character arc for the movie. That shows that like Neo's power is ultimately not for Gwen from The Witcher or being able to fly. Like his power of being the one is being able to understand that the Matrix is not real. And if the Matrix is not real, then the rules of the Matrix do not apply to him. And so if he dies, he can just not die because he doesn't want to die. When he's having the conversation with Morpheus in the training program, and he tells him, the agents are deadly, but they operate on a system of rules, and so they can never be as fast as you are. And Neo says, you're trying to tell me I can dodge bullets? And
you don't have to.
Goes, I want to try and tell you that when the time is right, you won't have to. And he doesn't have to because the bullets aren't real. The spoon's not real.
There is no spoon.
Exists. All of this, the Matrix is not real, and if he understands that and he's able to manipulate it,
mind over matter.
That's the power of the one. It's mind over matter.
What I mean. The ending is great until he stands up. That's great. That's part of the great part. But then after that, it's like, all right, he's not dead. He realizes he's the one. So, but Smith and the other agents are still here. What do? I don't know.
Let's kung fu some more.
Well, that's what I love about the first one. At first I was like, ugh, but I love how it uses these very classical cultural ideas and puts them into a very progressive environment. And by progressive, I just mean like, groundbreaking. Like The Matrix itself as a movie and a program is groundbreaking. But when you bring in these like very like uh, traditional ideas of like mind over matter and using like your body as your tool, like
There's a
with
lot of
kung
that kind of thing.
fu.
There a big theme in certainly the first Matrix movie is come as you are, become what you want to be. Like they're both of the Wachowskis are transgender, so when you enter the Matrix, you are what you become what you want to be. You can't you don't have it's impossible to do that in the real world. Maybe it's because the real world sucks. I don't know, but you realizing that you can be whatever you want to become. You can become whatever you want to be ultimately. And that is a really progressive idea that they were subtly sneaking into their action movie in 1999.
I don't know if I'd call it subtle.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the benefit of hindsight. If you go and watch the Matrix now,
I think it's the thing that makes the Matrix really relevant today is the
allegory,
like the philosophy around self-image. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was feeding a word. Yeah, I mean, the idea that we live in this sort of oppressive system in which we have no real say or control over what happens to us, that is unfortunately sort of a timeless message, or at least it's become a more relevant message now. When it's posited in 1999, and now with the new movie, the nature of the Matrix has changed because the nature of the world has changed. I just wanted to talk about the ending of Resurrections, those last
Please do go ahead.
3 or 4 minutes. So when I was watching it with my mother, she was kind of off put by how directly like chauvinistic the language from the analyst was, and the kind of the way that he keeps telling Neo to control Trinity. Like, why is she still talking? Like he's obsessed with Neo.
I
really
expected
so much
there,
with Trinity.
or maybe feel like there should have been a moment where he's like, I can't control her. She does what she wants.
I think that's sort of implied.
But didn't have to justify it. That shouldn't have to be justified
That's
by
fair
the
point.
man in the room.
So the reason
yes.
While we're on the subject of chauvinism real quick, when I was watching Reloaded with my fiance, when they're sitting in the room with the Merovingian and he gives the woman the cake.
Oh, Katy's gonna love this.
And like that, the middle third of Matrix Reloaded, she was like, this is the most misogynistic 20 minutes of film I think I've ever watched. And it's like, it's true. That's something that's always been in the Matrix. So I think the last 3 or 4 minutes of Resurrections, which was one of the best parts, did what the first third of the movie did in addressing some problematic tones in the earlier series.
Machines
because it was
sexist.
extremely satisfying watching NPH get his jaw kicked off.
Yeah, it is. I said before we started that he freaks me out, and I stand by it. That was really therapeutic.
Katy, quick note on what we're talking about. The Merovingian, he's like basically this. To oversimplify it, he's like this mob boss guy. And he, but he can manipulate and him and his people, they write programs, and a program is that he has a slice of cake delivered to this attractive woman in the restaurant, and the slice of cake gives her an orgasm, and she has to go retreat to the restroom, and then he disappears for a moment, and then we find out from his wife, who's played by Monica Bellucci, by the way, who's incredible, points out that he left so that he could go have sex with this woman in the restroom. So that's a thing that happens in the Matrix Reloaded.
What the hell?
And on that, it's not just the Merovingian who is chauvinistic in that scene, because I mean,
absolutely
spoilers
not.
Again, we're kind of diving into the scene here.
Go for it.
Monica follows the rest of the group into the bathroom, and the way that they have to progress in the storyline is Neo has to kiss her like he would kiss Trinity. Like that's the plot point, or that's the not even plot point. The plot. It is worst 30 minutes of movies, hands
And
down. It is
so-
grown worth.
But it's written by women, right?
It's
Yeah.
written at the time by pre-transition women. Yes.
Right. That says a lot
Right.
in itself, I think, about like
I mean, well,
the way that you are cringing at it is the way that I cringe at things.
I mean, and maybe the
every
intention is to point out how
fucking
gross it
day.
is.
Yeah.
But it's I wouldn't say the movie is condemning of it as at least as
with
to the
that.
point that it should be.
I would agree with it that it was built in to be
Yeah.
cringeworthy if it was just the mayor of doing it. But the fact that his wife, who's supposed to be opposed to that, goes into the bathroom and
Oh
does
my
the same
God.
thing, like her wanting her to get her is just as chauvinistic as him giving her the other woman the orgasm and following her in the bathroom. They're both equally
I think it's
cringe-inducing.
because they are both very old programs.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
to oversimplify it, as Brandon was saying, the Merovingian operates sort of on a deterministic philosophy, cause and effect. Whereas that, conflicts greatly with the idea of free will and choice that the humans who are escaped from the Matrix are trying to bring about. And so it's not a surprise that the people directly in the Merovingians' orbit also share that same kind of determinism. And so they don't really see free will as existing. People are just sort of a sum total of the chemical impulses of their brain.
Because they don't understand it. I just snuck in while you were talking. The problem is choice. You can give a human being every reason to choose option A, but they can still choose option B, even though there's no, even if they're going to risk their life. There's no, there's no.
To quote the architect, hope is the quintessential human delusion.
Oh no.
I love the architect's speech.
I love the architect so much.
There are 100,000 ways to illustrate all of those points differently than how they chose to do that with the first Merovingian scene.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
I feel like, it's all rooted in some kind of philosophy, and a philosophy this is why the Matrix is so hard to talk about. It's a philosophy that's rooted in the Matrix and like AI, or it's not AI, but like tech, right? We're talking about all that. But then also in like a socio-political world, it's like, how do you compromise both of those? Well, if you're making the Matrix, you do it in a way that's extremely aware, I think is the best word, right? So like it's so weird that I can be like, oh yeah, that scene totally makes sense. I have no issues with it. But it's because it's rooted in such a philosophy that I don't know how. The Matrix is so hard to talk about. By being that, it makes a statement about the kinds of things that the filmmakers wanted to talk about, So it's not gross in a way because you understand it. Like knowledge is the power, right? I don't know.
That's a great way to put it. And I do. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That is kind of how they reframe the red pill, blue pill in the earlier part, where Bugs is offering new Morpheus the red or blue pill, and they talk about how it's not really about the binary of it. It's about like choice and then the absence of choice.
Mm-hmm.
You've already made the choice.
It's not really a choice. Yeah, you've already made the choice by getting this far. By taking the red pill, you're not really necessarily making the choice in that moment. You are acting out the choice that you've already made by all the actions that you've taken to get to that point. It's the culmination. And it's the point from which you can't see what's going to happen next. Like all the choices that you make up to the moment of that choice, you kind of understand where you're going. I'm trying to get to this point. And then once you get to that point, you cannot predict what's going to happen next. Because you don't understand what happens next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adam, red pill, blue pill.
Red pill.
Katie, red pill, blue pill.
Blue pill. I don't like conflict.
Roger, red pill, blue pill. It's hard because
it's hard.
we're coming to this with loaded. It's a loaded
Yeah.
question because we know more than they know. Like I would probably take the red pill. Like actually, I watched my boys at Kind of Funny. It's a podcast group I follow. One of their guys, Paris, says I would totally take the red pill, and then I would be Cypher, and I would want to go back in. Because so I would that's
Yeah,
probably where I would be too.
That's what I think is knowing what I know, I would probably take the blue pill, but in that moment, I feel like I would be inclined to take the red pill just to see what happens. Just to chase the rabbit.
But one question that they never really answer in the Matrix, and I guess the first third of Resurrections does, is if you take the blue pill, does that make you stop wondering about the choice? Or is it just a holdover until
I think it has something, that because in Resurrections at least, and maybe it's the same rules don't apply in the previous Matrix, but it seems like the analyst is giving Neo the blue pills in order to suppress these kinds of thoughts. And in order to keep him there, he's trying to keep Neo in the box by giving him the pill. So the pill probably has some sort of psychological effect on him for sure.
Well, then, if that's the way we're going with this, I'd take the blue pill every damn day. Like, not that different.
Well, I mean, it could just be something where it's representing that choosing to sort of close your eyes and ignore the system around you is still a choice that you're making.
Or a choice that you've already made.
Yeah, even if you're only aware of it on like a subconscious level, every day you wake up and you go and you participate in the Matrix, and you understand that everyone is there at work with you because they all also chose to come into work to do the same thing, to participate in the Matrix alongside you. It's a collective choice. That's how the system works.
And at the end of Revolutions, the machines pledge to allow people the choice and to free any minds that want to be freed. So obviously some time has passed, and that led to an energy crisis, based on likely because of the number of people that chose to leave the Matrix. But should we go forward with the assumption that the people that are in the Matrix have chosen to be there?
Well, I think Resurrections heavily implies that after the Machine Civil War, the side that wasn't going to keep that bargain are the ones who won.
And here's a whole thing. The machines have a civil war that we talk about for approximately 13 seconds. And
we get a cool shot of machine ships blowing each other up, and that's about it.
Yeah. And
I'm going to amend.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Katie.
I'm amending my decision because I just remembered the scene about the flying zombie bots. Yeah, no, wait, red pill. I don't want to be thrown off a building.
You don't want to be a flying zombie bot.
Nope.
No, yeah, the machines have an energy crisis because of what because of Neo, basically. And they go to war with each other, and that's a thing that's just glossed over in this movie, and that'd be a super interesting thing to explore.
My previous statement about how Matrix movies have a habit after the first one of giving you like half an hour of really cool world building and potential ideas, and then just putting kung fu for the next hour and a half and not addressing them again.
It sounds like taking the blue pill.
They've just been duping us the whole time and feeding us the blue pill.
We hear about we hear about the analyst works for the suits, whoever they are, who we have to assume are like the Deus Ex Machina in Revolutions.
The baby face.
Yeah, the baby face. It's always sort of implied that the Matrix is not the entirety of the Machine City endeavor, even though it takes up a large portion of it. Like, maybe 8 out of 10 machines are in some way their programming relates to
Maintaining the
energy
Matrix.
harvesting program that the Matrix is. Yeah. And we hear about programs that enter and leave the Matrix. So we know that there's machine world space that isn't directly connected to the Matrix. It would just be interesting to explore more of that. Unfortunately, the movie being called The Matrix, the focus is on the part that, that we interact with, the Matrix. Although, I wanted to talk a bit about the scenes that they film in the Machine City, because being in the Machine City is kind of a big deal in Revolutions. We see it as Neo is seeing it for the first time, and I worry that now the all the scenes that take place in the machine world are kind of trivialized, if that makes sense. It's a big deal to see the Machine City outside of the Matrix, and now it's not as big of a deal.
They don't spend a lot of time filling in that information. Because the energy farm, which is where the fields where the humans are kept, is outside of the main city areas, or at least it was in the old movies. So, I mean, do we know for sure that other humans have gone to one of the central hub areas?
I mean, we don't. And, we don't even know if, the survivors in Io are the only survivors,
That's fair.
or we also don't know that the Matrix that we know of is like the entirety of the Matrix, or if it's kept in different localized areas.
Or maybe there are multiple, I don't know, maybe there are like different servers in an MMO, like clones of the same world that different people exist in, that exist simultaneously, independently from each other, or something.
Right. I mean, it's always like those are ideas, like Adam says, that brings up a whole bunch of really neat ideas, and then we don't really do much with them.
And this is why I said the movie's kind of a mess, because I like a lot of those ideas, but I also really I think the movie benefits from how focused it is on Neo and Trinity, and it could have been much worse than it is had that not been the case. And not to say there aren't other things they could have explored and made a decent movie from, but it's relative to other movies, or to the other Matrix films, this is very simple, and it still introduces a lot of philosophy. But from a plot point of view, it is Neo knows something's not right again, and then he escapes, and then he says, I need to find Trinity, and he spends the rest of the movie getting Trinity out. And they almost spend, it's almost kind of the other side of the first movie. We spend 40 minutes with Neo and they get Neo out of the Matrix, and then the rest of the movie is what Morpheus and Trinity were doing to get Neo out of the Matrix that first time, but they're doing it for Trinity this time. Am I making any sense when I say that? It's kind of an inverse of that, which I think is really interesting. But it all just comes back around to Neo and Trinity, who, by the way, we didn't get this far when we were talking about the end, but apparently they're now going to reprogram the Matrix in the image of humans.
I think the first chunk of it did what the first Matrix movie did, which was a lot of philosophical questions, and there's more of Neo figuring his own way out and that sort of thing. And then the second half is just a heist movie of Save Trinity, and it almost feels like this is the Matrix movie one group wanted to make, and this is the Matrix movie the other group wanted to make.
I can kind of see how Brandon says it's a reflection of the first Matrix film. I mean, the first film is getting Neo out, and then Morpheus gets captured, and then they got to break Morpheus out.
Yeah, I mean, it's I wouldn't. Maybe it's the Force. People always say the Force Awakens is just a New Hope over again, which is a statement I don't agree with, but I can certainly see similarities there, and I think there's a lot of, the first chunk of this movie is deliberately very reflective of the original Matrix, to the point where it's showing you footage from the original Matrix. But again, the second half is they're trying to get trying to get Trinity out of the Matrix. In the first movie, they have to go save Morpheus and get him out of the Matrix. Before the first Matrix movie, someone had to save Trinity, and probably assuming that Morpheus got Trinity out, but then prior to that, someone had to get Morpheus out of the Matrix. So it's freeing minds. And in the first movie, they free Neo, and in this movie, they free Neo again, and then Neo goes back to free Trinity.
I thought it was interesting how they do the fake out in the first third of the movie, where we see they come for Neo the first time and it doesn't work. He
didn't take the pill yet, or
he doesn't take the pill, and he has the big shootout in the office, and then everything just kind of melts away as the analyst compartmentalizes that experience.
Well, it's a parallel to the first movie as well, because the first time they try to get Neo out in the first movie, he's standing on the ledge and he drops the phone and he's like, "Nah, fuck this." He goes back in.
Yeah. It's I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. It is very similar to the first film in that way.
I think they just
bring the system.
Go ahead, Katie.
I think the way that they parallel edited the events, like the rising action, specifically at the meeting of Neo and Trinity, and trying to break her out in two different ways. I don't remember something like that happening in the first movie. Maybe there is, and I'm just missing it. But I really enjoyed how there was two components to getting her out. Whereas, like, I feel like in the first movie, or even with Neo in the beginning of Resurrections, it feels like a very like linear process. But I really enjoyed how like getting Trinity out of the Matrix and Resurrections is, for lack of a better word, a binary process of her like philosophical sense of self in the Matrix and then her physical body in the pod. So I enjoyed how they expanded on that a lot. I thought that was really intriguing from a writing perspective and a visual perspective. I felt like that was new, at least to me in my viewership.
That's fair. Any closing thoughts? It seems like we all liked the movie. We definitely agree it has some weird choices, which isn't to say old Matrix movies don't also have a lot of weird choices. But yeah, Roger, anything you'd like to say to wrap us out?
I think the scene where they talk about in the very beginning the office building, where they're like, Warner Brothers wants us to make a new Matrix game. It really does feel like that is the writers directly talking to us, saying Warner Brothers wanted to make a new Matrix movie.
Maybe it's best if I do it myself.
Yeah.
Instead of letting somebody else play with my stuff.
I feel like it's a direct. Lane is talking to us and saying, "Hey, this may have happened. This may be something that is going to happen, whether or not I like it." So, I'm gonna hold on. I'm being attacked by my cat now. So we're if we're gonna make it, then it should be a new thing, and I think that's a good way to describe this new Matrix movie. It is new. There's a lot of stuff that's borrowed from the Matrix franchise, but I do really feel like this movie wants to tread new territory. The Matrix works differently, even though the actors are the same. The characters are arguably very different from where they had been. And I think that works. I think even if we're going to be watching movies in reboot culture, making them as new as possible is the best choice. Even if and we all agree there's problems with the movie. It doesn't work. Everything that it tries to do, it doesn't succeed at. But at least it is trying to do new things every time we turns the corner.
And I certainly appreciate that. And I think, I keep talking about how focused this is, and I think that it could leave a lot of room to explore further. And I hope it happens. If I'm honest, I don't totally expect it to. But it's very different from the old movies. And I think ultimately that's despite being so referential to the old movies, I think that's a very good thing. What about you, Adam? Closing thoughts?
Sure. I'm excited. I mean, I hope something comes out of it. If not more movies, then some other media exploring the modern Matrix even more. Because I think one of the reasons the Matrix, especially the original Matrix, still resonates today is back then it was, look at all of us people just plugged into the system, and wouldn't it be crazy if there was like technology that we were all constantly plugged into and just interconnected with? And now that's where we are. So the society's relationship to technology has progressed in an interesting way that I don't think anybody really foresaw back in 1999. So the Matrix has always been a great way to look at how that interaction is and what that means for our society. So I'm interested to see where it goes in the future. Hopefully it goes somewhere, not just a one-time money grab, but it is Warner Brothers.
Yeah, I didn't get to talk about the way the movie uses mirrors instead of phones, but also how, like, what's the one mirror you keep with you every day? Your phone it's got a glass screen. It's basically one portable mirror. Every time you pick it up, if it's not on, you see the reflection of your face in the glass. The use of mirrors instead of phones is really interesting, I think.
On that note, I'd like to point out one really cool visual moment. The moment when they have to go out through the tiny mirror on the train. I hope that didn't just make a terrible noise. And it's like we're never gonna fit, whatever. And then it's like, and he reaches his hands through, and it immediately matches to his hands coming out of the goo. That was just a cool moment that as a visual guy, I really appreciated. Anyway, Katy, closing thoughts on The Matrix Resurrections or The Matrix in general?
I thought that this film, it's done very well. And I know that you've said, Brandon, that you don't like the screenwriting in it. I would say that the screenwriting in terms of beats,
it's just clumsy.
And structure. Yeah. No, I think the beats are okay. I think it works. What's clumsy is how they've tried to pack so much and made those questionable choices. I think that's the clumsy part. But if you look at it from like, here's the whiff of death, and then here's this part, and bad guys close in, it's very textbook, so screenwriting from a perspective of a formula, like I've got it. The choices, I don't know. It did not feel quite like The Matrix to me, having watched the first one. Definitely gained an appreciation for the first one watching this one. But I will get my action thrill from John Wick instead.
That's have Roger and Adam, have you guys seen the John Wick movies? Because they're bonkers.
Yes,
I've seen the first one.
No, yeah,
I have not watched any of the other ones.
You should definitely go watch.
You should check them out. They're kind of a niche thing, if I'm honest, but they're bonkers. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching.
That's, just to.
No, yeah, go.
Sorry, if I could throw in one last point.
Please.
But you mentioned that you'd get your action kicks from John Wick instead, and I think that maybe another secondary closing note. I don't think The Matrix is an action series, or it wasn't supposed to be, because the first movie is really a philosophical movie that has a bunch of action in it.
And I feel like they're trying to point that out in this movie. Like, people remember bullet time, and like bullet time was just a thing that we did, and that wasn't the fucking point.
Right, and fair point. I think that's the worst problem with Reloaded and Revolutions, is that somebody went, let's make more action movies called The Matrix, and it was like, no, that's why those two movies don't work that great.
Interesting. All right, good point taken. I will carry that with me.
On that note, remember that there is no spoon, and I will see everybody next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I had a
All right,
spoon.
thanks.